Hey, everybody, welcome back to TCB. Today on TCB, we are talking to David Biles. David, what's up, man? Welcome to the show.
My name's David. I don't know too much about kind of the economy per se. Like I understand it conceptually, took basic level government classes in high school, but I'm excited here to learn more. And yeah, I mean, you can always check me out on YouTube or TikTok. Like I said, I don't know too much about the economy, but I'm a guy that cares. I care about thinking about the future or just having a lot of like more of a deeper thought process when it comes to money and things like that, more than just, oh, well, I can buy this and make myself money. It's more of like, I buy this, make myself money, but what's the effect on everything around me?
Yeah, dude. I mean, I think you're ahead of most people, man. I don't think people think about money a whole lot. And I think once you start to think about money a little bit, be like, hey, what the heck is money? What do I actually need it for? What are we doing here? And then when you think about it from a system perspective, I think that's what ultimately led me to Bitcoin was I was thinking about how jacked up our actual money is. And I was trying to figure out if there was a better way to do it because it seems like we're just in this compounding debt spiral that's going to cook us all. So it seems like there has to be a better way. I came across David on TikTok because you made a little video talking about how, you don't understand how housing it should not be like a depreciating asset, dude. And I've always said that myself. I'm like, hey, man, like, why are we expecting a house to be 10x more valuable after 10 years or 20 years or whatever? It seems like it should be a Toyota Corolla, keeps getting shittier. You got to replace it with something. And, but we've kind of monetized our housing because our money is busted. So, I'd be curious kind of what your thought process was kind of leading into you making that video and then just kind of dovetail into since this is like a Bitcoin podcast, what's your overall impression of Bitcoin, man? I usually ask people where did they hear about it first and then just like if you could even remember that and then what do you think about it? Just general impression.
Well, the first time I ever heard about Bitcoin, I've always been kind of like an internet kid. Like I got a phone pretty early on, and ever since then, I want to say the first time was sometime within the 2010s. I couldn't say the exact year exactly, but I remember I heard about it early on just through like YouTubers or like people that are like known to be in online spaces that got on it kind of early. And I've always thought, I was like, man, if you did work a job that like kept you online all the time and you heard about Bitcoin early, there's so many people that made tons of money off of that.
Yeah.
And that was always kind of like what I knew about Bitcoin. I understand somehow it gets mined, and and I also understand there's like supposed to be a finite amount of Bitcoin. Apparently, I don't fully understand how that kind of works either. Cause I'm like, can you not just make more Bitcoins? Is that not a thing?
Yeah. Hey, dude, it's a great starting point. So let's just unpack that there. So yeah, there is the whole idea of Bitcoin, right? Was the kind of anonymous creator of Bitcoin, Satoshi Nakamoto, coming out of like the '08 housing crisis. He saw how we were just bailing out all the banks. Everyone was basically like the mortgage holders were losing their house, losing their ass, but we showed up with a whole bunch of printed money and we bailed out the banks to make sure the banks were okay. Didn't really care about the people so much. And he was basically saying that there's an infinite amount of money that the government is willing to print. You need to come up with some kind of money that they cannot control, they cannot stop, and they cannot print. So they won't be able to dilute everybody's savings away, as is happening now, as we see the price of everything around us ripping because they cannot stop printing money. So the idea was I got to create something that has a finite supply. He did that just by computer code. I mean, I don't know. I'm not a coder myself, but if anyone kind of understands code, you can basically, code anything to have certain parameters. The Bitcoin protocol rolls out and the software dictates how many coin get issued into the system about every 10 minutes. And it just has a hard cap of 21 million. So every 4 years, he started by every single block issues 50 Bitcoin, and then it went to 25, and then it went to 12. So it's really just a mathematical protocol. We're now at the point that 3.125 Bitcoin get issued every 10 minutes with that when every block of transactions gets processed by the software. But it's just the way that he chose to issue it into his system in a known way that's known to all of the users of that system. And nobody can change it because it's a decentralized computer network. So, kind of similar to the internet itself, every single computer kind of has a vote in the system, and there's no single, central server or processor or data center or CEO or anyone in control that can make just a singular change to that software or that network. it would have to be a consensus change. So now you have people running that software on computers all over the world. There's tens of thousands of computers basically running the same software network. They're all contributing to the security of that network. And in order to make any changes of the network, you need to convince an overwhelming majority of the people running that software to implement the new software version and implement the change. But just leaning into normal economic incentives, because this happens to be a monetary protocol, the one thing that you could pretty much guarantee that all the users of the system are probably not going to change for any reason would be to increase the supply, because if they increase the supply, it dilutes the
Mhm.
Bitcoin that they're holding. They don't have
Gotcha.
any economic incentive to do so. So it really, I mean, the idea of diluting a currency is really so you can steal from people against their will. So the people that are protecting the network themselves and owning the currency themselves, they're not going to vote to dilute themselves.
So it's kind of like an online democracy in a way where it's like they all kind of have to have a similar thought process before anything could really be changed within the system.
Yeah, 100%. It's just opt-in voluntary. So just like, I mean, anyone could run a node, anyone could run the software, anyone could buy Bitcoin or not. So it's not forcing anyone to do anything. It's just incentivizing people to, bring processing power to the network, because they get financially incentivized by issuing Bitcoin to whoever kind of wins this lottery and gets to put the next block of transactions out there. But you can just kind of trust the protocol because it's decentralized, and because there's no, I mean, yeah, just think of it. I guess like an analogy would be if you take like the United States dollar, it's controlled by the government, and in lieu with the government, the Federal Reserve Bank, which is not a government entity. A lot of people don't know that. It's like a cartel of banks that like basically makes money by lending it to our United States government, but they get it created out of thin air. But it's like a central entity that basically anytime they need more liquidity, they just hit a couple strokes on a keyboard and just create more money. So the idea of kind of Bitcoin was to decentralize that. So there is no central governing body. So even though that I mean, we're human, we know that that kind of greed exists. It's like just a normal human like condition, but you just have to create something that no matter how greedy any singular actor is, they don't have any control to make that change on their own. So they actually have to get buy-in. So imagine if the U.S. If they had to in a hypothetical universe, if the U.S. had to go to its people and it
Mhm.
said, "Hey, we want to increase the money supply by whatever $9 trillion," and we would have to vote on it, like the people would be like, "Hang on, how does
Yeah.
this help
It'd be
me?
like
Like, what the hell are you
suddenly,
talking about?" Yeah, and it was like if you needed to buy into the people, they'd obviously say no. Like the insidious thing about it is they just do it against our will, without our vote, and it's really the most kind of an insidious power they have. It's having the most effect on our lives, and it's something that we don't have any say in whatsoever. None of us approved it. None of us voted for it. Nobody said increase the money supply. Nobody said, you know, I mean, we did establish the income tax. We did establish the Federal Reserve, but I don't think the intention was to just increase the money supply without limit. They see the rent going up. They see the health insurance costs going up. They see housing going up. They see groceries going up, but they don't have the wherewithal to really connect that third order thinking of like why exactly is that happening. The best kind of, I mean, you're on TikTok like me all day long. You see people railing against greedy corporations, and I was like, well, a couple things here. They all had a big meeting right around 2020 and decided to get exponentially greedier because everything has gone up like 30, 40, 50% just in the past 6 years. So
yeah, and
either,
it's
yeah,
not
go
like it's
ahead.
just one industry. It's like every industry, they all came together and they were like, we are going to charge exponentially more, higher than the rate of inflation, higher than rate of anything, and we're just going to be increasing prices it's crazy.
I mean, the point there is either, like, you can kind of think of it like either all of the companies met on some secret island at some secret retreat and they all had a secret handshake that they were all going to keep increasing prices at the same time. Or you could just look at the other side of that equation, and no matter what I'm buying, if I'm buying groceries, if I'm paying rent, if I'm trying to buy a house, if I'm buying a car, all of those things, half of that equation is money. So it
Mhm.
just makes a lot more kind of sense once you just kind of like objectively break it down. It was like, oh, well, maybe it's not all the goods and services that are simultaneously getting repriced higher. maybe it's the money getting repriced lower. And like that would just make sense why it's everything and it's not isolated to like a particular industry or a particular business.
Yeah, because you do see a lot of I do see a lot of people thinking it's like corporations and everything, and I always kinda goes back of mine where I'm like, it's corporations to an extent, but it's kinda like the government, right? Because it's
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
the government could s 1, they could stop them from doing anything that would be seen as, like, egregious to, like, the population, but they don't. And then it's like, on the second hand, if they didn't just keep printing money, I feel like there'd be less of a they wouldn't want to raise prices as high because it would just the value of a dollar would still be worth more.
Yeah, well, yeah, I mean, just think about it, and if you just really simplify it, if you put it in a vacuum, the economy is $100 and the whole economy is 100 apples. And then suddenly you still have 100 apples, but the government goes ahead and just doubles the money supply to $200. So now you got $200, you still have 100 apples. So the just normal economic equilibrium seeking machine of the free market was okay, we had $100, we had 100 apples, dollar an apple. You got $200 floating out there and you still got 100 apples, $2 an apple. You got $500, you still got 100 apples, $5 an apple. And that's what's happening. We're just increasing the money supply because the government is in a completely insolvent debt position. We have $39 trillion of outstanding debt. We're running $2 trillion deficits every year. So we bring in $5 trillion in taxes. We spend $7 trillion year after year after year. So it's not even that they're really choosing to print the money. They absolutely have to print the money and they cannot stop printing that money. And since it's a compounding math problem, it's moving at an exponential rate. So like the prices have been going up. I mean, like anyone that say bought a house in the 1980s, whatever they bought it for, 100 grand or something, it might be worth like $1 million. It might have taken 40 years to get there, but it's probably going to be worth 2 million in a much shorter period of time. Like it's since it's a compounding math, it's just speeding up. And I think it's like we're starting to, that old like kind of like allegory of like the pot or the frog in like a boiling pot and kind of slowly turning it up at first and then it just starts cranking up. You can kind of tell that people inherently feel it's speeding up and kind of getting out of their control and they know their wages aren't keeping up with it. They feel that anxiety, but they can't put their finger on why it's happening.
So then I guess it says so what I'm my understanding is what we're trying to do with Bitcoin is trying to make like a decentralized system to kind of take the power out of the government's hand to be able to do that. But what dictates, I guess, then the value of a Bitcoin?
I mean, it's subjective, right? I mean, a Bitcoin at the end of the day is going to be worth whatever somebody else is willing to pay you for it. So it's a matter of, and I think the reason why it seems from an outside observer, like, what is going on, dude? This price is all over the fucking place. It's like, it's up to 120 and then it's down to 60 and it was at 60, then it was at 15, then it was at 60 again. It's just like, it's like nobody, it's the world, I think, is trying to figure out what is this worth to me? And I think because a lot of people don't have perfect knowledge about it, obviously, you kind of have like two things going on here. You have a growing monetary network, almost similar to the internet itself. Like the early days of the internet, a lot of people were doubters. Paul Krugman of the New York Times said the internet's stupid. It's not going to last. It's just like the fax machine. But then eventually it came to just dominate our entire lives. It's dominating this call we're having. It dominates your entire life. You're on your phone all day. We use the internet all day, every day for everything. So that network ended up winning out. And you think about any other kind of growing network technology like cell phones or the internet itself or Twitter or Facebook or Instagram or, X, pick your kind of social network or any kind of network thing, grows and then it just kind of explodes. So there's this growing network, monetary network that is Bitcoin. And then on the other side, you have sound money versus this ever expanding fiat currency universe. So you kind of have a growing technology and then you have a sound money element where in that respect it competes with gold, it competes with treasury bonds, it competes with real estate, it competes with any other store of value. So there's two things going on, neither of which people really understand all that well. So I think it's just the reason it's so volatile is I equated it to like just imagine like a worldwide auction And there's just people coming in, they're making all these bids, but nobody really knows what it's worth quite yet. We're all still trying to kind of figure that out. But I think ultimately, if it depends on what you think Bitcoin is, whether it's just going to be a kind of niche little nerd money that like people just only use in a tiny ecosystem. But since it's engineered basically to be perfect money, if you think about like we had gold was supposed to be our sound money. Gold became money because it had particular monetary assets. It was divisible, it was scarce, it was recognizable, it was portable. It kind of had these like they debated this since like ancient Greek times, like these parameters of what good money would be. Gold met that the best in the natural world. It was a little too slow once we kind of sped up and had a more industrial and more technological economy. So we built this kind of fiat layer on top of gold to be able to meet the speed demands of a modern economy because moving gold is very difficult and we can't push gold over the internet. We can't, do these things. You had gold was the money, but then you had coupons or promissory notes, which turned into dollars. They were supposed to be redeemable for gold. And then we just depegged from gold entirely in the 70s. And we're just like purely fiat now. That seems to be a horrible experiment that's going to have a very terrible end. And it's only going to allow, I mean, we're 50 years in. It seems like it's already failing. But Bitcoin was kind of engineered. It was like, okay, instead of trying to find the best money in the natural world, or instead of trying to kind of come up with a makeshift layer, credit layer on top of the money in order to come up with like the money shortcomings, what if I treated money as an engineering project? It was like, I need money to be fungible, durable, scarce, recognizable, all these things. I just engineered these parameters into this money that I'm building. And then, oh, what's the other part of money? The other part of money is it's too easily corrupted because if it's centralized, it's abused. I have to make a money that's incorruptible and can't be changed and can't be controlled. And I have to make sure that they can't dilute it. I got to make sure that when people have a savings account and they go to sleep, it doesn't end up being worth half as much in 5 years because they're creating so many units. And then you also just look at kind of the fundamental functions of money, which is, I need it to be a store of value. I need it to be a medium of exchange and then eventually be a unit of account. And then I would like it so I wouldn't have to, I could just exchange the money directly. So instead of using a third party like Visa, where if I own a pizzeria, I have to give Visa 3% every time there's a transaction because they're like facilitating the transaction. Is
Yeah.
there a way that I could just digitally trade with my customers directly where there's no third party involved? So I think Bitcoin just looked at this overall kind of engineering space of monetary needs. And it was like, hey, humans are good at innovating. Let's figure out what exactly a perfect money would be, and let's just design it from the ground up instead of looking for it. And that's what I think Bitcoin is, and that's what it's kind of proving itself to be. I think there's a evolutionary process to that happening, but that being said, what is the value of Bitcoin, which is your original question? It's going to be, I think, what the future of Bitcoin hopefully is you look at the entire universe of store of value assets. And that whole pie is about $1 quadrillion, which is like $1,000 trillion. When you add up, there's about $300 trillion sitting in bonds. There's about $300 trillion plus sitting in real estate. There's about $100 trillion sitting in currencies. And then there's about $100 trillion in kind of collectibles and gold and things like that. So it's going after kind of all of those things, and the potential total addressable market of Bitcoin is $1 quadrillion. And then if you divide 1 quadrillion by 21 million, that would be kind of the potential highest upside you could have Bitcoin be. Now it's not going to replace everything, but if you really look at what is the monetary premium locked in those things, you have $100 trillion in currencies that are all losing value at an accelerated rate. So given the choice, if everyone could save money and money that actually preserve their purchasing power or potentially increase their purchasing power over time, that would be preferable. So there's 100 trillion it could take. You look at real estate, which is kind of why we got connected in the first place. You got $300 trillion, but how much of a house is utility value? Kind of to your point of it being a depreciating asset. How much of it is utility value, which would actually decrease over time? And how much of it is a monetary premium where people are investing in real estate because they can't save in money? Like if they could just save in money, they would put their money in money. but since our money is shit, they have to put their money in something else. So then you end up with these people that are like, it's just like your homies too. It's like some guy and you're like, why do you have 17 Airbnbs, dude? Like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
And it's because they can't just save in money. So there's a giant monetary premium in real estate. When you look at gold, like we said, was like the best money we could find in the natural world. But the reason we have fiat money in the first place was gold kind of failed as money. It got centralized. We put a credit layer on top. It couldn't really keep up with the modern digital economy. The beauty about a digital currency is it could be sent over the internet. It could be as fast as we need it to be. It could be as divisible as we need it to be. So it could completely like kind of demonetize gold to a certain extent, even if it just meets the market cap of gold, which is like 30 something trillion dollars. That would imply a Bitcoin price of like $1.7 million a coin. So, and that's just gold, ignoring bonds, ignoring real estate, ignoring the currencies. So it's hard to say once all of these kind of economic store value assets get repriced because Bitcoin is kind of a new player on the field, how much of the monetary premium it takes from all these other buckets is kind of TBD. The low bar, I think, would probably be at least matching the market cap of gold, because it basically is digital gold. It does what gold does, but does it better. So it should take most of that. So like kind of at the low end, but so I don't know. I mean, I would argue it probably is worth somewhere between 1.5 billion and whatever that high bar is, like 10 million plus, but that's really for the market to decide. It's not for me to decide. I'm only one single market actor. So all I can kind of do is put out the like probability frontier of like the potential markets it could disrupt. And then it's an evolutionary process to see who comes to see it as who comes to value it more than running 5 Airbnbs. Like who comes to that $300 sitting in bonds if I'm getting paid a 3.5 or 4.5% coupon on a bond, but the true debasement rate of money is closer to 8 or 10%. It's a negative dead money asset that's actually losing money every single year. So it should take most of that but I mean, you also have to be able to make the argument to a treasury holder that, like, because their retort's going to be, dude, Bitcoin lost 50% of its value this past year. So how is that better than making 5%? But you have to be able to zoom out and understand that long-term Bitcoin's caggering closer to like 30% a year, and
Yeah.
it's volatile. It's all over the place. But if you just kind
But
of
the
look at
long
like the 200-week moving average, it's just slowly gaining value as it gains understanding. So you have to be able to weather the volatility, kind of understand where it's going, be willing to kind of take the ride, buy the ticket, ride the ride. But I guess that's the long answer. The short answer is I'm not sure exactly what Bitcoin's worth, but I know it's worth a hell of a lot more than what it's priced today, because it's not understood and it has a lot of different markets as far as monies go that it can disrupt.
Well, I always had an idea that whatever it is worth right now is just gonna continuously go up from at least from where we are now. Because I mean, even like I said, back when I first heard about it, people were talking about there's I believe it's like a story, like an old story about how a guy had invested Bitcoin early and then he paid for like a pizza with it. And then you look at the
Yeah.
amount that he paid for the pizza with, it's like millions of dollars today. So it's like
Yeah.
I've always realized like Bitcoin is more about like the long-term investment. And my thought process after hearing kind of what you were saying about it being similar to gold is if in a world where everything works, I guess, perfectly for Bitcoin, is the idea that Bitcoin is kind of like that new base layer that we use. And inevitably, because I mean, eventually someone would make like let's say Bitcoin was that new internet base of gold per se, and then inevitably I'd feel like someone would try to do the same thing they did with gold, where it's like we're gonna divide that up. So you have 1 Bitcoin, but I can have like 1/100th of this by holding like this dollar. Am
Yeah,
I making sense?
so kind of your point. Like gold it's cumbersome to move, but it's also pretty hard to divide. I can't really walk into a Starbucks and like chip off part of my gold bar to like buy a latte. So the beauty about being digital is a digital thing is infinitely divisible. You just have to add more zeros behind a decimal point. So already there's, even in the code, there's every Bitcoin, one singular Bitcoin you think of, is already divisible into 100 million pieces, which they call satoshis. So that already
Mhm.
exists, and it's so if you wanted to make that make sense, kind of to our current system, if Bitcoin was worth $1 million, a Satoshi would be a penny. So that already exists, and then if Bitcoin were to accrue so much value density that a Satoshi even was too much, then it's just code. So you could just
Mhm.
make an update to the code, divide it down further. So in that sense, like Bitcoin is kind of infinitely divisible, but dividing it is only because it's accruing so much value density and you're not diluting its value. Like, so it's a little weird because everyone's like, well, if it's infinitely divisible, doesn't that make the supply infinite? And I'm like, well, no, it's still just one
Yeah,
pizza.
because you're
Like
still
you're not,
starting
yeah,
at a
you're just cutting it into smaller slices, right? So, but yeah, so that already exists. So great. I mean, great question. The idea is, Bitcoin, the monetary network, kind of is that base layer. It's probably going to end up operating almost like the kind of Swift system does, where it's kind of like large, slow transactions, almost like between financial institutions. And then there's all these layer twos being built on top. So there's already the Lightning Network. So I don't know if you saw recently I went to Steak and Shake. Steak and Shake actually accepts Bitcoin. You can go in there just like buy a burger and fries at a shake with Bitcoin, which is
That's
pretty
cool.
cool. And if you ever do it, you go in there and you're using the Lightning Network. So you get on the kiosk, you're like, hey, dude, I want this, 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 this. It shows you a QR code. You get your Bitcoin wallet out, you scan that. It sends a Lightning payment. It settles immediately. So Steak and Shake doesn't have to pay Visa. They don't have to pay MasterCard. They get it directly. There's no chargeback. So their Steak and Shake's transaction costs have come down by like 50% because they implemented this. And I think it's only a matter of time as understanding grows that more merchants will start to accept it and it'll make more sense kind of as everyday payments because Jack Dorsey's company Block, who runs the Square terminals that are in most small businesses, they just rolled out functionality for Bitcoin to anyone using Square. So any business using Square can turn it on. And it doesn't mean they have to just accept all Bitcoin or only Bitcoin. They could I could pay in dollars and they could save some of it in Bitcoin. I could pay in Bitcoin, they could immediately convert it to dollars if they want, or I could pay in Bitcoin and they could accept Bitcoin. It basically gives them the full range of functionality to do that. And I think eventually, as people come to understand that the dollars they keep on their balance sheet are stealing from them, and the Bitcoin they keep on their balance sheet continues to accrue value, eventually more and more people are just going to kind of like capital just kind of flows where it's treated best. They're just going to continue to turn it on because it's just going to be better for them. It's going to give them a competitive edge. So we'll see. I think it's going to be a slow process, but it's there's no technical limitation to that future
Mm.
happening in the present besides understanding.
So, like, with them rolling out, like, Square and everything, that means, like, so there would be no more, like, the extra 3% goes to Visa or 5% goes to whatever credit card company that they would normally do.
Yeah, so they wouldn't have to pay that transaction cost at all. Because like you can think about Bitcoin is the same as if I walk in and just hand them cash. There's no third party between you and me. If you were working in your business and I just walked in and gave you cash, that's what Bitcoin is. It's digital cash. So it's a bearer instrument, but it's a digital version of a bearer instrument where so instead of using a credit card, which is my credit card talks to my bank, talks to your bank, talks like it doesn't there's
Mhm.
all these intermediaries involved to actually have the transaction settle. In this case, it's just I give you Bitcoin, you receive Bitcoin. It goes over the protocol, which is this decentralized network that doesn't controlled by anybody, cannot censor a transaction, cannot stop a transaction, cannot take a fee for the transaction. I mean, it takes a fee for the transaction, but doesn't take an arbitrary fee for the transaction. So yeah, it just goes direct from one person to one person through this kind of internet protocol. So there's just no third party involved. And I think what you'll eventually see is just like Steak and Shake is learning. They're like, oh, this is pretty cool because I mean, a lot of these companies, despite the greedy corporation talk about TikTok we talked about, most of these companies, if you think about like restaurants, grocery stores, etc., their margins are very small. So if suddenly they don't have to pay a 3% fee on transactions, that might not sound all that significant, but for a low margin business like that,
It
it's night
really
and
makes a
day
difference.
different. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I actually work for kinda like a small business mom and pop style shop myself, And a lot of the times people will ask us because it's an appliance installation, so we're like in their house installing things. And
Uh-huh.
they'll ask us if they can, like, if we carry one of the square things, and we always have to tell them, like, no, you can just call into the shop. But we always tell them, like, just call into the shop. So hearing that makes me think like more and more small businesses need to get on that. It's kind of like my boss, he's older, so he may not know about this, but this is the kind of thing I would tell him. And it's like, we should do this because we don't want to charge people extra. We don't want to have to deal with any of those extra fees. And this is a way we can just kind of get there, get in, get the transaction done, and then it's all settled right there.
Yeah, yeah, dude, it's crazy. I mean, like literally, you could. I think I need to do this live. Like it's like these wallets. I've done this before, where you could literally just pull up a wallet. You can show a QR code like over Zoom, like over the internet, scan it, and just send money, and it settles final, like with actual finality. It's a bit like it feels like you're almost like you're like a witch or something. It feels like you've unlocked some kind of like really future technology that you're like, how could that be possible? Like, how could it be that kind of just instantaneous? And but that's what it is. And I think it's just a matter of like right now, anybody watching. So like here, it's like got like a Bitcoin wallet or it's got a Lightning wallet. So this is live. If you were talking to a client in Indonesia, he could literally send you the equivalent of cash over the internet with no intermediary in a matter of seconds, and it would settle at a final, like, have finality in a matter of minutes. It's just not something we've been able to do with our money, and the innovation that could potentially unlock is just enormous. When you can, I mean, I think somebody sent some recently. They sent some multi-billion-dollar transaction over the Bitcoin network, and the amount of fees they paid was 60 cents. So they sent billions of dollars of value across the world for 60
60
cents.
cents.
It's just, yeah, it's a huge unlock. It's just a matter of all the most powerful players that have controlled these financial rails for our entire lives. They do not want to give up that power, man. They are fighting tooth and nail. I think the beauty is it feels like the incentive structure of Bitcoin is winning. So last summer they passed the Genius Act, which was kind of like dealing with stable coins. Everyone's kind of incorporating stable coins. And I feel like that's just kind of the Trojan horse on our way to Bitcoin, because it's like you can do all kind of the digital transacting, but you're still doing it the dollars that are getting debased because of the debt position. But you can do all those same things at a currency that's not controlled by the government, that cannot be diluted or censored. And I think that's the next step. But like it's the easy on ramp just to be like, oh, it's just a digital dollar, just like I use dollars. Like, okay. But then the Clarity Act, which is they're trying to pass, they may not, but that's just supposed to create rules for kind of all the rest of the kind of digital asset currency universe. Like, who's going to regulate this? Is it going to be the like CFTC, or is it going to be the Security Exchange Commission? Who's in charge? What are the rules, etc. So I think the banks are just slowly bending the knee. And when you saw, like, I don't know if you saw, like, now there's ETFs. So now, like, BlackRock has a Bitcoin ETF,
Mhm.
Morgan Stanley has a Bitcoin ETF, Vanguard finally has one, even though they said they never would. It's kind of this incentive structure where when everyone is kind of playing this dilution game where it was always try to find like the cleanest dirty shirt, but all of the currencies are getting debased away. And then suddenly there's one that's not. It's really enticing as a business to like eventually gravitate toward the one that actually holds value and accrues value, because you work for a small business, man. Like if one balance sheet is bleeding out and the other one's accumulating, that's going to be a short game. Like
Yeah.
eventually you're going to out compete. So I think it's just a matter of, even though the banks don't want to give up their power, even though the Visas of the world don't want this to happen, some innovations you just can't really stop. And it feels like Bitcoin is that. It's what the internet needed from Jump Street. The internet always needed a way to digitally send money with finality without an intermediary involved. And it just took a little bit longer to get there than the internet itself. But it feels like it's here. And I think a lot of people think of it, they're like, well, I'm going to hold out until the next Bitcoin, like, because this must be like the MySpace. I'm going to wait until, the Facebook or the whatever, the next one. But, it's a protocol. So that would be as if when the internet showed up, instead of getting a web page for your business, you were like, oh, come on, this is the first internet. There's going to be a better one. And it's like, okay, but that's not how protocols work. They don't really get replaced, they evolve. So like it's probably just going to keep evolving to like meet whatever needs are there. but it's pretty hard to launch a network from scratch. It's like, I mean, anyone that's even launched a TikTok account knows this. Like, to just enter like an unknown arena and get anyone to care or follow or watch or connect, it's not easy, and it kind of takes like, it'd be as if I was like, I could go and start a new Twitter in my basement right now. The hard part is getting billions of people to use it, and it feels like Bitcoin was able to do that, even though it was never pushed by any company, never had an advertising department, never had any of that. Just its incentives took it from one guy's laptop to now being, I would argue, one of, I mean, there was a time when people didn't know what the hell Bitcoin was, but now when you at least see that orange Bitcoin B, the brand recognition is like rivaling like Coca-Cola. At least it's
Yeah.
like people have seen it before. And it's just really hard to go from nothing to there, and to the point that now you have, all the world leaders at Davos, even though they all seem to hate Bitcoin, they can't stop talking about it. And then you have presidents talking about it, you have banks talking about it. It's really hard to get that level of penetration. And I think even despite having that level of penetration, it's still only adopted by like less than 5% of the population. So all of its growth is still ahead of it, despite the fact that it's already getting kind of what they call like Lindy. The Lindy effect is the longer something's around, the more likely it is to continue to be around. So I think all of these industries that it will disrupt, it's kind of a join or die thing. Anytime there's a new technology, the old guard is always fighting against it. When they first invented automobiles, they had a rule that there had to be somebody walking in front of it, waving a big red flag to tell everyone to get out of the way, because they were like, it's too dangerous, it's too fast. And it's like, but I mean, there's just some innovations that are so helpful. At the end of the day, you cannot stop them, no matter what. There's just certain things that once there's an idea whose time has come, you just cannot stop it. And I think Bitcoin's one of those things, but it's obviously, it's up for, just like I said, it's up for vote. We'll see if everybody comes to find the value in that. I think what is becoming increasingly obvious to me is there's a whole lot of people I see in their car screaming into a camera about how expensive their life is getting. I know Bitcoin can help them. They just don't know it yet.
It's kind of like how people used to say, like, and you need to invest early, but like investing early now is things like Bitcoin or like things of that nature, just so that they're increasing at a rate that actually will get you to a point where you have some savings, or you have kind of like this extra like backing behind you, so that, like you said, you put money into a savings account, it's almost like it's losing money faster than you could gain it with it just sitting there.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
it's not almost like, it absolutely is losing money. I mean, they pay you 0% on a savings account, and the inflation, they're debasing it 8% a year, and it's accelerating. So, well, the real answer is you have to put your money somewhere that earns more than 8% a year. And if you're not getting an 8% raise every year, you're falling further behind. You just have to understand that that's the money dynamics we're dealing with, and it's ruining people's lives, but that doesn't change the math. So it's just a matter of understanding it, and then like voting with your own time and energy, because money is just your time and energy that you gave away and were compensated for. So when they dilute your money and they take your purchasing power, it's as if they just like threw away 3 hours of your workday, and they're just like, you didn't get compensated at all. They're stealing your time from you. And like, once you see it that way, it becomes really insulting. And it's just like, they do not care. They kind of like blatantly throw it in our face. They never explain inflation to you. They never explain why prices are going up. They always blame the greedy corporation instead of taking any accountability for like the unsustainable debt and unsustainable spending that's driving the problem. They never tell you, and that's why nobody knows, because it's not on CNN, it's not on Fox News, it's not on NBC. They'll never tell you this stuff. So they're basically gaslighting you into thinking that it's some other problem. So, I mean, because everything is going up, everything is hitting all-time highs at the same time, which, if you hold any one of those things, probably feels good. You're like, hey, I picked the right thing. But when you see everything hitting all-time highs all at once, I think it has to give you pause to be like, hang on a second. What's going on here? How is everything winning? The only thing that's not winning is the wage earner that doesn't hold any assets. He doesn't have a house. He doesn't have a portfolio. He doesn't have gold. So he's just losing his ass, and it's driving him crazy because all he wants to do is he doesn't want to become a freaking financial manager when he goes home. He wants to play with his kids, like he wants to just do his job, get paid in a fair money, and go home and live his life. And that used to be possible. It wasn't until we went onto this, rat race of fiat money printing that you started to steal from everybody in their sleep without them knowing. And it's just like the most insulting, insidious thing. Then enter Bitcoin, where you're like, it's just mathematics. It's complete like all you have to do is trust math more than you trust people. And I'm not saying all people are bad, but
You know?
but exactly, math is not going to two-time you. Math is not going to lie to you. Math is not going to steal from you. So it's just like you just put it there and you're like, you can just trust. You're like, hey, because I know they're increasing the amount of dollars in the universe and it's just going to continue to reprice this finitely scarce thing. I know that even if nobody adopted it, not a single new person adopted it, just the fact that they're repricing it because they're adding so many fiat units into the system, it's going to reprice just because of that. And then you have the demand story of 95% of people don't understand it yet. They need it, they just don't have it, and eventually they'll come to it. So you got kind of those two things converging at the same time that are both just upward price pressure on a Bitcoin as long as it survives. But it's got the most powerful enemies on earth. It's got governments that don't like it. It's got central banks that don't like it. But it's pretty much proving to be a cockroach. It's like, it doesn't care that you don't like it. You can't kill it.
That's always been a good sign to me. It's like all these like corporations or governments that seemingly would have the money and resources to put something like this to a stop. This is such like a needed and effective thing that there's nothing they can do about it. Like it's really, there's no option for them to get rid of it because we as a people kind of slowly are starting to understand like, yeah, you guys shouldn't be able to just dictate how much what I do is worth at like the drop of a dime. The
Yeah.
other thing that I think is very interesting about Bitcoin is you kind of said it earlier, how someone could be in Indonesia and right now just send a Bitcoin over, which I think is really, it's almost like how the internet connected the world in a way. I feel like the next step to that is like people using, for the most part, like the same type or similar type of currency. So it is that simple for everybody to just like sit in one country and then from another country just send this over immediately. Like you don't have to worry about conversions or anything. Like it's just you got paid and that's what it is. And
Yeah,
then
dude, 100. Yeah.
I just wanted to ask, like, is Bitcoin available like around the world, or is it kind of centralized to certain countries or wherever there's people mining it?
I mean, dude, it's everywhere. I mean, they're mining it everywhere. A lot of the mining and a lot of the like America just has a lot more expendable income than a lot of the world does. So a lot of Bitcoin is owned by Americans. It's like something like 40% or something now. El Salvador is basically on like they moved to like a Bitcoin standard. It came out in like a lawsuit with Kraken that Bhutan had been mining it for years with like their just kind of stranded hydro energy that was going to waste. So they were way ahead of it. And then now it's, I think the US owns, I mean, if you believe the stats, they own like 300,000 something of them. China owns 200 something thousand of them. Russia is starting to unlock and allow banks to handle it. Iran is pricing oil in it. They tried to let you like be able to pay a toll through the Strait of Hormuz with Bitcoin. So it is kind of just kind of hitting its moment now where just like any technology, I think about this about the internet itself was this way. I'm old enough to remember like my buddy's dad had like a car phone and we thought it was like the coolest thing in the world. You're like calling, you're like, oh no, dude, I'm in a car. They're like, what? What do you mean you're in a car? But it's like, but I think probably the best kind of contemporary example of this is like Uber. Like Uber didn't exist and it seemed like it was nowhere. And then you snapped your fingers and it was just suddenly everywhere. And I think we're about to see the same iteration of that of like these kind of cyber cabs and Waymos. So like Waymos are just showing up. I took one in like San Francisco, and they're in Austin. They're just kind of beta testing in Denver now. But once this kind of like self-driving taxi idea gets off the ground, it's going to be another one of these technologies that was seemingly nowhere, and then overnight you're going to blink and it's going to be everywhere. So I think that's kind of similar to what's happening with Bitcoin, where everyone kind of there's like a first they ignore you, then they laugh at you, then they fight you, then you win. I think Bitcoin's kind of working its way up that ladder where it was just straight up ignored at first. It was like, oh, this is just stupid internet nerd libertarian money in some corner of the internet. And then they laughed at you every time anyone brought up Bitcoin of any kind. It was just mocked. They were just like, oh yeah, Bitcoin, yeah, sure, blah, blah. Like you saw that everywhere. Similar to like there's an old clip of Bill Gates and he went on the David Letterman show and he was kind of trying to explain the internet to Dave and he's like, Dave just didn't get it, just like anyone did. Like it was a new technology, didn't understand it. And there's like, he's like, well, you could do XYZ with it. You can listen to this. And he was like, and David Letterman was like, oh yeah, cool. Haven't you ever heard of radio? And he was just like, just laughing at it. He was mocking him. And then the internet went to take over everything. And then it's the then they fight you stage. I think we're somewhat in that where all the banks are trying to shut it down. All the credit card processors are trying to shut it down. All the central banks are trying to shut it down because just like we kind of talked about, they want everybody to use digital currency, but they want everyone to use digital currency that they control, that they can program, that they can tell you, hey, if you don't spend this money to juice our economy by the end of the month, it's going to expire. Or, hey, you took 6 trips to Europe this year. That's a little too many. You can't actually buy a plane ticket until next January. And they can program your money to do that. So they kind of want the complete social engineering controls. So they want to pivot there. But even they're kind of slowly coming around to the idea of if I cannot stop this thing, I have to adopt this thing. So we're kind of still in the then they fight you stage. I think there still might be another shoe to drop there. But just like how this kind of started with, wouldn't it be cool if you could go anywhere in the world and we're kind of all on the same value proposition? One that helps prevent for like us exploiting other people in kind of a slave labor way because we're all kind of using the same sheet of music. So, China can't just devalue its currency to make sure that it's the export capital of the world. It just has to compete on its own as opposed to like manipulating the price of the labor. But also it'd be like you could go to Japan, you could just walk in and like you don't have, just like you said, you don't have to exchange the currency. We might get to the point that there's like a bi-metal era where, for anyone that's like from out of seas, think of all the people here for the World Cup. How beautiful would it be if everyone is accepting Bitcoin now? They all use different monies, but they all also understand Bitcoin. So they're like, I'll just pay you in Bitcoin because we all have that collective understanding. Now, whether you have to turn around and turn that into euros or yen or yuan or dollars or whatever, bolivars, no big deal. But we might kind of get there. But I think eventually, hopefully, it just collapses into one where nobody wants to be stolen from.
Sure.
And I mean, we complain about inflation in the US. It's a lot worse in other places, dude. I mean, there's places that inflate at 200% a year and they just don't they literally just cannot save their money. They have to reset their money multiple times. We have the benefit of being able to, since we have the reserve currency of the world, like Venezuela, if they're filling the pool a little too fast, it's going to overflow real quick. But we get to steal from everybody on earth that uses dollars. And that's a giant pool of people. So it's like you can really take a little bit, and they don't really even notice. I think it's kind of the math behind the idea of like a 2 or 3% inflation rate in the first place. It's like, well, why is that good? It was like, well, it's good for debt because you can pay off debt with cheaper dollars over time or cheaper money over time. But it's also the rate at which you can steal from people that they tolerate it or they don't really notice or they don't really care. Because, I mean, if you're going to say 2% inflation's good, then why isn't 20? Why isn't 50? Why isn't 75? And it's like, because if somebody breaks into your house and takes 2% of your stuff every night, it'll take a little while for you to notice like what the hell's going on. If somebody breaks into your house and they take half your stuff, you notice as soon as you open your eyes. Yeah. Yeah. So it's just kind of this slow way to insidiously steal. But yeah, I think we're getting to the point where it's kind of happening everywhere all at once. And it's going to seem like it was nowhere. And then it's going to seemingly seem like it was everywhere. And the beauty about that is since nobody controls it, but everybody has an incentive to adopt it, then it also allows us to kind of vote with our energy, where since it's a jurisdictionless asset, we're going to be able to choose as humanity to go where our labor and our energy is treated best. So if there's really authoritarian regimes, I could leave that place with all of my net worth in my head. And people don't understand how powerful that is yet because in the US, it doesn't really matter yet. But imagine if you were in Ukraine when the bomb started dropping, or you were in Iran when the bomb started dropping, and you literally had the choice of just grabbing anything you could have in your arms and getting the hell out of there. Now, with this, all of your value can be locked into a network that nobody can actually control. Now you can memorize the password to your account and you could literally walk across the border butt naked with all of the energy you've ever earned in your life in your mind, which it's a disincentivizes violence. It lets people kind of flee very horrible situations without having to lose everything. So it's just kind of a game changer technology. And I know that got a little bit meta, but it's like once you kind of understand the power of what we're dealing with here, you kind of understand why it has almost this kind of black hole gravity where it's just kind of slowly sucking everything into it, whether people want it or not. It's just kind of happening. And it's just better to just like the internet, you could have fought it and you would have lost. Or just like telecommunications, you could have fought it and you would have lost. Just like the steam engine, just like the motor car, you could fight it, but it seems that the incentives are you're going to lose. So you're probably better off. I mean, I was younger at the time, but if I had a time machine and you know what you know now, I would have gone back and learned everything I could about the internet right when it showed up. You know, it was like, I mean, all Mark Cuban did to buy a basketball team was figure out how to get people in Texas to be able to listen to an Indiana Hoosiers game from Texas. That's all it was. That was the innovation. But it was like I mean, to his credit, he was just early to an innovative technology. Instead of laughing at it, instead of fighting it, he leaned into it, and now he's a billionaire. So
And that's
I think,
kind of, from my understanding, that's like the opportunity we all kind of have with Bitcoin right now, to where it's like, if we get it now and kind of like figure out and understand it, we're kind of in early, which means like, I would assume our odds of having some kind of wild success, even if it's not to the same level of Mark Cuban, is just higher in my brain.
yeah, no, I think that's true. I think it's early enough that it's an asymmetric bet, and it could be like a hail mary. But then I think also, honestly, the real power in it is just you get respected again. Like you can literally go to work, do your trade, save in something that you know they can't take. And I think, dude, the energy I see cooking up online when I see this stuff is people are trying to point the finger at the boogeyman. They're trying to make it about politics. We keep throwing the keys across the car as if we change the Messiah, somehow things are going to get better. But meanwhile, everything continues to get worse and it seems to be gaining momentum. And I think once we understand that it's not a politician problem, it's a math problem, then we can kind of consider binding together where like when you print money, that money has to find its value somewhere and it finds its value in all the other money that people are saving in and working for. So when you print money and you inflate asset prices, you debase everyone, you dilute everyone working for money, and then you basically mathematically rotate that money from the bottom to the top of people that are holding asset holders. So I understand why people are mad that the rich are getting richer. I am too. But they just want to go and they're like, "Hey, that guy has nice stuff. Let's take it and spread it around." And I'm like, it's kind of like trying to fix a leak by bailing out the boat. I was like, you got to fix the leak. Like you have to fix the math that's causing it in the first place. And I see so many people so angry that should be on the same team and they're so busy fighting each other about a math problem that they cannot change that they're just wasting a lot of time and energy doing that. It was like, dude, all you need to do is every time you get paid in a money that is mathematically engineered to steal from you, immediately convert it into money that they cannot take. And if we all did that, that is the revolution. And the beauty of that is then we're all kind of working for each other because when we all go to work and we all put energy forward, right now it's getting confiscated and moved upward. But if we all saved into money that nobody controlled and we all held, then all of our work and all of our ingenuity and all of our effort, it goes to all of our fellow man that's also working for that money and also saving that money. It doesn't get confiscated upward. So
Mm.
it just makes this like all that anxiety. It makes you like, I see these people that just don't want to go to work because they don't see the point. And I completely understand that because the math is bad and it's taking from them. But if you could go to work and you knew every single ounce of energy you benefited from, and not only you benefited from, but your loved ones benefited from, it's a much greater incentive to just be like, hell yeah, dude, let's pour a cup of coffee, let's buckle it up, let's go kick some ass. Like it's just a different incentive system, and it just I don't know, in my eyes, totally superior. We'll see if it comes to fruition, but
It makes sense
David,
to
dude, that
me.
was a Yeah, go ahead, dude.
No, it
That was a
makes
quick
sense to
hour.
me. Yeah, it really went by. But yeah, I mean, it all makes sense to me. It's like the whole thing of if we all just stop working and making money at the same time, that's not really good for anyone. But if we just stop the government from having the ability to really devalue and take our money, it kind of just stops the source. And then we're kind of
Yeah.
at a new page where we can continue on.
Yeah, thank you for coming on, man. I don't know if you had one big question you're sitting on over there that we could hit before we're done, or did we hit it? I appreciate that.
I think you got most of my questions that I had. I mean, like I said, I came in here pretty like new to the space, general understanding, but you answered a lot of like my deeper questions on the idea of like where the end goal of Bitcoin is going, or like where the idea, like the main idea, what even like the point was. Cause that was always really like what I was lost on. It's like I didn't fully understand the reasoning behind just making another system of money. But you telling me how it's not centralized and like we kind of keep our value. And then also with the whole being able to connect the world and everything is all just really eye opening to the ideas behind the whole cryptocurrency in general.
It's a cool idea, dude. It's a big idea, but it's a cool idea. And hopefully for the benefit of all of us, it continues to grow, man. But
Mhm.
hey, dude, well, I know you said you're on TikTok and YouTube, man. Where can people find you? What are you working on? What's your YouTube channel all about, man? What you doing? Where can people
Uh,
reach out?
well, on TikTok and YouTube, it's both Avidin, Aviddn. On YouTube, I do a lot of gaming or just reacting to music kind of content. On TikTok, it's more of a variety, but like I said, you can kind of hear me talking about generally things I care about and the way I care about other people on there. Yeah.
Yeah, dude, I love that actually, because that just like I would just came across you just randomly and just struck a chord because I was like, dude, this homie gets it. This is awesome, man. That's why I reached out. I was just like, hey, dude, I think I got something you might be interested in, dude, because
And I
I
really
I
appreciate it.
completely feel that anxiety, man. So cool, brother. Well, dude, thank you for taking a little time to that, man. I really appreciate you coming on here. I would throw out if you or anyone else listening here, if anybody else knows anybody that's willing to be put a little courage up there, put themselves in the hot seat like David did tonight, man. This is really just about educating people about, what might actually save us all here. So if you're willing to do that, reach out. I'd love to have you on the show. Share this with your friends and family, man. Hopefully they get curious too. And we all thank David for taking a little time and getting his questions answered today, dude. So Dave, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, brother. Take care.
Of course.